what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that MTN never saw a change in its staff turnover until it recruited people from other companies that knew what in the world they were doing in massive numbers. People were no longer prepared to take nonsense lying down. Like, they were quitting as quickly as they were getting recruited. And while the salaries were competitive, because these people had actually gained real skills, they had gained real expertise, they were not scared to get to try and apply out there, because they could substantiate the salaries they were expecting. They could substantiate them. The people who couldn't substantiate what they were asking for were the ones who had been at MTN all along. They were earning a lot of money for people who didn't have enough skill, whereas these new recruits were being paid a lot of money, but they were worth that lot of money, and so they could leave. They therefore became there was an instability with staff staying. People quit within 3, 4 months, 5 months of starting to work because they were frustrated by taking over a project. There was always a complaint to that regard. They were getting frustrated with taking over a project that was basically impossible to run. When you get handed over this project, the resources on the project, the human resources on the project, one of them would not have touched that particular project in 4 months. Kanjani, this is your project. How have you not updated this in 4 months? Because there was no project manager. So these are things that they were trying to patch up and fix. So in the beginning of this recruitment drive, they were losing a lot of people as quickly as they started to work, but it started to stabilize and they stayed. And when people were starting to stay, I was among those. By the time I rocked up, people were starting to stay, okay? In spite of the sorrow, they were like, I'm gonna fix this, because they felt like they were part of something and they were helping a company get to where it needs to get. At the same time, remember, MTN is still losing money. It's not losing money, but it's not making as much money as it used to, right? So bonuses are not as heavy as they used to be in the past, from the experiences of what people are saying, but we don't know that because we're new. We've never seen those violent bonuses that can pay for an entire house type establishment thing. So old staff started to get, their morale was fizzling away. The morale of old staff was fizzling away because while we were excited to be in this new environment with these new opportunities, they had seen a better time. And so, yeah, morale in them was lowly. But in us, we were just okay, because it was a nice company to work for. Megum 90, guys. And yeah, if I tell you the 2010 World Cup, wonderful time, went to multiple matches, because MTN was a sponsor. That was the kind of company that we worked for. So we had never seen better days, meaning that we had nothing to complain about, but everybody else from the past was complaining. More or less, they were grumbling, type establishment thing. And then they started to be shoddy, underhanded activity on the part of legacy staff, right? Because now they were MTN. It was never a mature organization, I shall say that. It's almost like it started making money before it started running a business. And so for those reasons, the way that they did things was so underhanded, and there was a lot of corruption as well. People were pushing each other along. They were helping one another grow. There was no proper due process, and due to that, lots of corruption had thrived. And given the level of corruption that had thrived, people was trying to protect their turfs that had gotten to where they got in a shoddy, underhanded way. So lots of stories were peeping out in the media about corruption at MTN, this and that and the other happening. And of course, when such things are being spoken in the media about our company and people that we know are mentioned in news headlines, people are gossiping then on the ground. So we started to gossip the company as staff members on some nyasi. Anyway, whatever girl nyasi you can lunch. We started to gossip the company. We started to gossip the corruption of the company that was being broadcast in the media. And while we're gossiping the company, everything is good for now. And then all of a sudden, MTN is like, after a financial year cycle run, after the EBITDA is like, basically the financial statements of the company are made public. After that, next thing MTN is like, section 189, retrenchment. I had come from a company where there was retrenchments, okay? And I was among the people retrenched, and they used LIFO all up in my grill. Last in, first out. Hi guys, I can't lose this job. Come on, no, relax. But yeah, I've gotten all of these salary increases and I have just started. I'm only gonna have 3 months experience, and you're busy trying to recruit. But then we were comforted in my particular department that there's not gonna be any retrenchments in my role. And during the time when they called out on retrenchments, that's when all the people from organizations that were mature, the ones that came from Ababa Standard Bank, that had been there for 4 years and now they're working for MTN, the ones that were from FNB, the ones that were from BMW, the ones that were from all these other mature organizations, IT companies, IBM. That's when they were like, ay. Does this company not know that you cannot retrench people in a public company unless you have substantiated it with your financial statements to show that you are doing so badly as an organization that it is facing an extinction level crisis, essentially, if it does not sever staff? It has to be a last resort. So I live in South Africa, and my nation, unlike America, has got these hard knock, intense labor laws that favor very largely the employee more than even the employer. So in America, I've noticed on television you can just fire a person and that's it. In South Africa, it is so hard to get a person fired. It is so tough to rid them from their employment. Organizations have had in South Africa to basically become little criminals in hiring human resources in order to manage staff on the ground on their behalf instead of them actually being impartial mediators. That's what happened to me. Given that the South African labor law is so protective and largely partial towards the employee more than the employer. And this is in order to prevent employers from just firing staff, from mistreating them on the job. And the reason why they even came out with that hard knock labor law that protects people even when they ought to be fired because they're just not doing what they're supposed to. It was to bolster the unemployment, to bolster employment and eradicate unemployment statistics in South Africa after apartheid was abolished. Plus, after apartheid was abolished, the new government came on board and they wanted to allot employment equity. Black employment equity to the previously disadvantaged groups, and black employment equity became a whole thing. And in BEE, you then had to give advantage and opportunity to previously disadvantaged groups like Indians, like blacks, like colored people. Now, in order to make sure that white people that are filling corporate South Africa actually hire black staff, it had to be put in law. Right? You have to have this many. Companies had to basically provide to the government how many black people they have, how many colored people they have, how many Indian people they have. So to eradicate unemployment and to make sure that after apartheid is abolished, white people don't keep the doors of corporate South Africa closed by simply saying that we failed interviews. They had to put certain faces of a certain color in as warm bodies in chairs. Very well. So our labor laws in this country are extremely protective and sensitive towards, because of our history, largely towards staff members. So we can start unions, fights, all different kinds of weird things, burn fires and strike and not come to work for 5 days during that strike and still have a job even though it was an unpaid strike. That's what's good. So we are very heavily protected, and I will admit sometimes at the peril of companies, because there are people that have to go but they just get to sit around because the labor laws of this country protect them just indiscriminately without taking anything into consideration about this nasty employee. With that being a thing, MTN having not before been subjugated to the tyranny of such a thing as that, became very crooked. But before they even became crooked, their numbers. This is a company that's used to making a lot of money, and it wants to keep making a lot of money. And it went on all of a sudden this hard knock recruitment drive in order to fix its processes, because auditors came in and realized that they basically are running a crash for a company, and they made a whole bunch of money before they actually ran a company. And so they then recruited very highly skilled, expensive people to fix the company. And then when recruiting these people and paying them did not offset offset. It's a teething phase that is inevitable. It's going to happen. When it did not offset the initial losses, because the market was getting saturated for their product, and so it was no longer doing as well, even though it was still doing really well. It was still doing really well, but not as well as it used to. When these new staff members did not make life better for the company, and they were still operating as overheads, and they were costing the company money, when then the numbers came in and the shareholders were putting pressure on the board of directors, they made this dumb, unconstitutional decision, this illegal, by labor relations law and the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, that says that everybody has got a right to earn a living, essentially. MTN just started to basically hook up these Section 189s, these retrenchments of people without numbers, books, 1 minute, without books justifying it. Ugh. The organization was making money, just not as much as before. Plus, it was paying more salaries, right? And it decided that, no, we're going to get rid of people. No, we made a mistake. Sorry, you gotta go. Acting like the old South Africa where you can just fire a person. Acting like America where you can just fire a person. Breaking labor relations laws. They could not fire anybody based on their numbers, based on their books. The company was doing so well that retrenchment did not make sense. It did not make sense economically for the company. We were not bordering on liquidation, nothing of that nature. And they just decided to launch a Section 189 against even the Council of HR. They just went on with it. On some, no, they gotta go, because if we don't chop numbers, we're not going to be able to make the same kinds of commitments that we have made to shareholders. We're not going to be able to do ABC. It's like, you can't work like that. Remember, you're trying to fix processes. Remember, you're trying to do better. You're trying to be better. Remember. And they were like, no. So retrenchments across the company, it was like a tsunami, just started to happen as quickly as they recruited. Within about 3 years, they were now firing the same people, and they were launching 189 after 189 after 189 after 189. I don't know how many 189 Section 189 meetings I attended in the space of any given year, from about the second year that I was working at MTN. The first year, there were already rumors that retrenchments are coming, but my particular department was still busy hiring, very hard knock. When the hiring stabilized, I attended a Section 189, but like we were told that our department is safe. We don't have to worry. It's just that we are part of the bigger finance, the CFO. We are under the chief financial officer, so we just went to that meeting, but our division is safe. However, somewhere 2 years into my 3-year whole journey, more like, let me say, no, not 2 years, like maybe a year and a half, because I was still a program coordinator. That's when I started attending all of these Section 189 meetings, where now we were basically in danger. We were in danger now. I was like, what's going on? And they were doing this despite the fact that they couldn't. First of all, they were not allowed to retrench the first batch of people that got retrenched. They were not allowed to do it. They were not allowed to do it according to the law, because the books did not justify it, and they still retrenched. So essentially, we are dealing with people that have got, if they knew the law, successful cases at the CCMA. We're dealing with people that have got winnable cases at the CCMA that got unfairly dismissed because that was an illegal retrenchment. So therefore, it qualifies as an unfair dismissal. They didn't know their rights. They did not know the law, right? That was the first thing. Employees in the office busy gossiping about it. Hey, how can they do this? How can they do this? We thought it was just the one or the two, but they just kept on rolling in year after the year. And each year there would be like 4 Section 189s and batches of people that would just get retrenched. And nobody was safe anymore. And at the same time as this, then the company was still not making as much money as it ought have been making, or as they were hoping. Like just these rash, haphazard decisions. They did not take into consideration, if you're going to do a heavy recruitment drive in a company, initially in the first few years, you will experience losses before it starts to get better. It will taper or plateau before it starts to incline, because people have got to actually do what it is that you hired them to do. Never gave them an opportunity to do that. Everything fell apart. Just as the processes were getting improved, everything started to fall apart. So now the company is panicking. The company is panicking because year on year, numbers are not doing as well. Each year, there is a plummet. Each year, there is a decline. And this looks like something that could ultimately become an exponential slide downwards, basically decimating an entire company. And so their response is to retrench people. Their response was to retrench people instead of innovate, instead of strategize, instead of come up with a different strategy. They displayed that they had run a company like it was a circus, because the product was selling itself. And now that the market was getting saturated, do you understand? You guys, now that was a thing, they had to now actually compete. There are competitors out there. And they were not competing, they were just firing staff. That's when, then, because all of these firings of late Janes and Joes on the ground were not making a dent, because strategy was not changing. That's what needed to change. They need to change the way they do things as an organization, change the face, the direction, the value proposition needed to change. You couldn't keep it the same. So what did they do? That's when they then started to target not just late Janes and late Jones, not just the entry level stuff and the entry level management and maybe the middle management. This time around, they then went for the senior managers. They went for the general managers. They started to realize, right, that the problem was the skills, the lackluster strategic brainhead of management. Like the people that were busy making a decision to rather fire people to keep the company making money instead of innovate. It was ultimately woken up to. They were eventually able to snap out of it and realize that our problem is strategy. Like proper, how is a whole multinational corporation reaching that point this late? They finally realized that we have got to do a staff reshuffle. We've got to change our executive. We've got to change our management. If they don't meet certain goals by a certain time, they must be held accountable. So initially they laid the blame on the people on the ground and didn't do anything for the numbers, and they eventually faced it upwards. And it was when they faced it upwards that people started to play real dirty, because now their careers were on the line. They were facing retrenchments from companies that had paid them too much for the level of skill that they were in, and also the level of expertise and qualification that they had. And so they were facing having to take a demotion in another company, if at all they're going to be okay, or starting their own businesses, and they panicked. A lot of them scattered like rodents to the opcos, the operating companies of MTN. In other words, they moved to Nigeria, they moved to Ghana. They have an opco. You get my point. They moved to the opcos, those who could, to go and work there. Those who couldn't moved to the opcos, played dirty. That's when I started seeing witchcraft from senior managers' bosses. At that stage, I was already born again. So after 2 years of running around like a headless chicken, being an administrator, I ultimately got promoted to project manager again. So now I started to work as a PM, right? And I was a PM servicing the marketing department very well. MTN was a marketing focused organization. So as project conceptions were in marketing, and then they would, the project management teams would then work with IT to build the value propositions and therefore send products to the market. So essentially the innovation hub was in marketing at MTN. And so it was a very coveted position to be a project manager in that space, because you were basically at the beginning of all things in the organization. Yeah, but there was rivalry between project management and marketing segment managers that wanted to do the job of a project manager, but that's another story for another day. That's just company politics, and it is irrelevant in this particular regard. You will find those anywhere you go. I'm busy talking about the level of rubbish that is slapping me, that is similar to what's going on with Israel, and I'm looking at the time, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to ultimately get this information out. Okay, cool, very beans and bananas, very well. So the management started to get looked at after enough of us lowly people on the ground got fired, right? After enough lowly guys got fired, they started looking at them. So their jobs were now on the line. And that's when we started getting announcements on the intranet of people that had been around for a minute. Guys, I'm speaking like almost at inception. Yes, the MTN did some pretty shoddy things. Yes, well, the guy who was the founder of MTN, the very founder, at some point he became the CEO. He was de-chaired, unchaired, whatever. They first shuffled around a whole bunch of CEOs. So there was a time of stability and it was nice, right? They messed with stuff on the ground and they were busy getting fired. Then the bosses, that was the most telling time, where it is that guys, like, CEOs were being changed like panties, like underwear, yo. CEOs, like almost every 6 months we had a new CEO. Hey, I'm not joking. And you know why? Because a decision was made by the board of directors that if a CEO does not flip this model within like half of the financial year, within 6 months, if he does not make a dent in the organization in a positive direction, he gotta be replaced. So they would put them on 6-month contracts, and at the end of that 6 months we'd have a new CEO. And that was not true. That was not the only true about CEOs, but it also started to become true about who do you call this, the executives, the bosses, execs too. When they were worse than CEOs who were given 6 months. They were on 3-month contracts. They had to flip models in 3 meager months. So in marketing, in the last year of my experience, go MTN, I saw 3 marketing executives. And I lost my job because of the third one. 3 whole new marketing executives in just 1 year. In just 1 year. Yo, guys, it was a circus. Do you understand? They imagined that this was the thing that they needed to do in order to fix the company, change leadership, and give them a short amount of time to flip the model, because they were so used to making money and so quickly that they expected that these strategists would fix the company overnight. But there was rot from the very inside. There was rottenness with processes that were not being followed. RDSs, like I told you, could not explain to you a product that is already out there in the market, cannot reverse engineer anything, cannot like proper, and these are things that take time. If at all you're going to suddenly want to fix processes in an organization, you should at least leave leg room for 5 years, perhaps even a decade, to get to a point where now you are basically competitive next to a standard bank or something. But instead, they wanted to see these differences in just 2 years, in just a year. And when they didn't see them, and so therefore bolster the share price, bolster the numbers at the end of the year that are being shared with the public, they appeased the public by just firing executives, firing CEOs, firing senior managers. And guys, it was just the circus. So many people that were around all along were losing their jobs, including the woman that was ultimately my boss. She ended up leaving. She ended up losing her job. She did not get it. They ended up hiring some other dude from outside. They were so keen on getting external staff because they imagined that the gangrene was on the inside, that people on the inside were not skilled enough. And so they were just very haphazardly and criminally, essentially, because they were not honoring the law of the country, just getting rid of people, breaking all different kinds of human rights to Timbuktu. So when this stuff started happening, that's when a lot of dirty play started also occurring, where skilled employees, people that are actually good at what they do, which I was, even though my CV, remember I told you I had an issue with experience, but I just kept on getting promoted. But once I was on the job, I was, I got displayed as a clearly sound recruitment choice. I was good at what I did, and I never really got to shine the way I needed to shine until I was finally a project manager, until I was finally given the opportunity. And now when I'm a project manager, I'm chairing meetings, I'm speaking with GMs, I'm speaking with SMs, I'm speaking with the business. Do you understand? And so my face is being seen and my voice is being heard. And the very same thing that's gotten me promotions like no man's business all over the show in other companies where I used to work is now speaking volumes on my behalf. I was buried all along working for a team of project managers and program managers, and it also made me realize the jealousy of my boss, guys. This woman pretended I was not much. So too did her subordinates, who were program managers, and so also somewhat my bosses, pretended I was not much. I finally got a promotion because of a project manager that's successful. Okay, so a program manager left his team to go and become a senior manager somewhere else. He applied for the job and got it. And then a project manager applied for his position and became a program manager. When that project manager became a program manager, he asked a favor from the coordinators to do some project, to help him along with some project he was doing, some strategy he was working on. And I headed that whole thing and did so well in it that he called me and was like, Karabo, I'm so impressed with what you do, and there is an opening for a project manager in my team. I want you to apply. You're gonna get it. So it had to take one of the bosses leaving, another person replacing him, for me to finally get the recognition that I needed. So God used that man as a vessel. Otherwise, I would have stayed rotting in that position for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Why? Because the staff for MTN was low quality until they got people from outside that were trained up by organizations from other university, and they then were given a run for their money. And when they saw how skilled, how gifted these kids coming from outside are, these people are, they held on to jobs, held on to positions, held on to promotions, held on to appraisal success, basically claiming that you are dottering like a geriatric, you're struggling, when you are the best PM in the team, but they're holding on. So they withheld reward, they withheld praise, they withheld accolade, they withheld recompense to people who had actually really put in the time, and this squelched staff morale. And during the time when they started to take the retrenchments upwards to CM, to SMs, GMs, basically to the boss ladies and boss guys now, the boss ladies and boss guys, they played even dirtier. They played even dirtier. They were actively sabotaging individual people in their teams to get nowhere. And this is something that I only found out. I'm finally getting to my point. This is something that I only found out, guys, when I was, when I got a promotion. There was a whole restructure in the company because they were shuffling and bosses were changing. They were trying to create a flatter structure because they imagined there were too many bosses. They finally focused on bosses instead of the subordinates. And in so focusing on bosses, they flattened the structure. And in flattening the structure, certain people who were chilling in positions as bosses were demoted. So our boss, who used to give me grief and badly appraise me, like wreak havoc in my life, got demoted to a project manager, having been a program manager at first. Type thing. Anyway, when she was on our layer, they then, because they flattened the structure, we could only report into a senior manager. And that was a vacancy that they opened. And some dude that was a senior business analyst applied for it and got the job as a senior manager. While, boss failed the interview and got demoted and made a project manager just like the rest of us, while this guy all of a sudden became a senior manager. Things like this caused so much strife in the organization. So when the senior BA successfully applied to be a senior manager, he was now my boss. I was like, I didn't know you anyway. Hello, how you doing? Congratulations. What can we do for you? On the ground, everybody was bitter and jealous and all these things against this guy who was more or less my age. I told you at MTN it was possible to have a boss that was your age, that was very, very senior. This guy, more or less my age, he was our boss now. Some of his subordinates were much older than him and they had beef with him. But nah, I was a Christian. I'm born again. I ain't got time for that. I've got a job to do. That's what's good. So I welcomed him. We worked well together. Whenever he needed something, because everybody was busy gossiping him, he could feel the tension in the room. So he would come to me and ask me, what do you feel about this and that? He would have these like one-on-one meetings with his staff members to get information, and I would give him information, and I was working with him to help him along. And so he made a decision to make me and this one other business analyst lady his two ICs. So the team was initially our team was made up of just project managers, and then they did a restructure and it became project managers, business analysts, and testers. So this guy was in charge of that big team of BAs, PMs, and testers. So this big team, he needed extra eyes to help him along, given that he was coming from outside and needed to, not outside of the company, but outside of the team, because he was already working for MTN. It was an internal promotion that he got. Very well. So this guy gets the job promotion. Okay. I help him the most. Me and this other BA girl serve him despite everybody gossiping the living daylights out of him. I don't withhold information. I'm just working. There is a project manager that I'm working alongside, right? Not alongside in this particular capacity, but she was in my team. She was junior. She didn't have any experience. She ended up working for MTN in our team. Nobody wanted to train her because she was a weird recruit, because funny things used to happen at MTN shenanigans. This girl, because I felt sorry for her, I trained her. And so we became very close, an Indian girl. We were tight, like as in bosom buddies. We went everywhere together, right? We were attached at the hip. We were friends and we were both born in the same year. We were tight up to this point. I had to mention that girl, all right? For reasons that I will highlight ultimately. Let's move to the next part. This boss of mine likes me a lot, right? Because I am helping him work well. He needs to know the business. He's coming from another department altogether. I know the business. I've been working with the business for a minute, right? So I'm helping him along. He starts to trust the living daylights out of not just me, but me and this other business analyst who also was helping him along. I told you guys that it was a team of BAs, PMs, and testers. So when it comes to the BA side, given how inundated he was, he made 2 ICs out of a project manager and a senior business analyst. And this chick was a senior business analyst and I was a PM. Around the same time, because MTN was realizing nothing is coming together, they're not innovating properly, all they're doing is copycatting all their competitors, etc. They had started to bring, auditing firms on board. No, not auditing firms. What I want to say, management consulting firms. They wanted to find out what in the world we can do to improve ourselves as a company because everything is falling apart. They finally started to want to take matters seriously concerning their state as an organization. They wanted not to do better, like be a big little boy or big little girl. They brought management consulting firms that are also auditing in nature to give them advice, to gather insights, sit in on our meetings, all that jazz, and then give them insights back. However, these insights, as gorgeous as they were, whenever I would sit in on any of the in all of these meetings where they were giving insights, my jaw would be on my desk, on the table, because I was just gobsmacked at just how brilliant these people were. They would take their insights and then do nothing about them. They would just so they were paying expensive consultants to walk among us looking like men in black proper and we're aliens. And then once their project is done, they would go back to where they were at and just what? And they wouldn't take the advice. And so there was a lot of gossip again on the floor about that. On some, they hire all these management consultants. They bring all of this needed resourcing in the company. And then they don't take the counsel. They don't take the insights. They don't run with them. They don't build projects based on it. All they do is copy the competitor. That's all they do. So at this rate, they will continue to fall apart. My boss believed that was an issue. Just as me. And so we were basically kindred spirits, birds of a feather that had the same agreements. Because remember, he used to be a commoner, but now he's a king. So he was among all of us, and overnight, because of the flattening of the structure, he jumped from business analyst to senior manager. So he agreed, just like all the commoners on the ground were also agreeing, that why don't they take insights seriously so that we can start to execute the insights. You know why that was the case? Remember, we're dealing with old legacy staff that don't want change. They are resistant to change. They also brought change managers. They brought so many structures on board, and these people would make these recommendations. Who under heaven would roll out these strategies? Who would effect them? Who would execute them? Who would innovate? Who would put little suggestions in a suggestion box? Their subordinates. They did not want their subordinates shining, rising, being seen. And so they would sit on suggestions and made it look like the company is not growing. It was so defeatist. I don't understand. It was like demonic, proper. So when my boss became what he became, our senior manager, I finally had like a boss guy that realized that something is wrong over here. And he was also in agreement that there are all these insights, but marketing keeps on coming with the same concepts. We don't understand what's going on. They're not working on them. So we became fast friends, if you want to call it that. And we got close. We had a very close working relationship. He made me his 2IC to a point where essentially I got low-key promoted, in the sense that because he was so inundated and there were all these meetings all over the show happening with the company restructure and them trying to change the company model and come up with new fresh ideas to do whatever. He couldn't be everywhere at the same time. He was not omnipresent like God. So he would send me to some of his meetings, and I would sit in on them, and he would send me with this business analyst would also either come with me or go to another meeting on his behalf. So we were like information gatherers for him. So it was in these meetings that I started to get seen. Not only seen, but also asked questions. My boss wasn't there, so whenever the capacity of my boss was to answer a question, I would answer it. And I was respected, I was regarded, I knew what I was talking about. They did not look at me as some child, some kid. They listened to me. A whole bunch of executives, including the CEO. So I got seen by very big people in this ecosystem. It would later come back to bite my boss in the behind because I'm good at what I do. He did not realize that in making me his 2IC, that I would get seen in favorable light by the boss of his boss, by the boss of his boss's boss, basically by the CEO of the company. Nonetheless, this is all brewing, it's happening. Me and this SBA are working together to help our boss along, because frankly, he's got too much load and he's a new guy. We need to help him along. He trusts us because we are the two people that did not persecute him when he was new in the team. As our boss, we did not give him grief, pass him shade, all that attitude. But he was good. He was good about keeping his head above water. So, I mean, I'll give him temperance kudos for that, right? He was able to keep his cool, but they were really treating him badly, I will not lie. Cool beans. So that was what was going on. I'm looking at the time, I'm freaking out, but we're gonna get there finally. Yeah? They then come up with this company-wide strategy, this company-wide program or slash strategy to get us to where we need to get. Innovation is a problem. They want to, in a very short space of time, 100 days to be exact, deliver this many products, these particular products, and we needed a drive of project managers, BAs, testers, IT professionals, developers, basically people who are going to be building the thing, marketing staff to send it to market, to do the whole GTM strategy. You get my point, blah blah, all that jazz. Yeah, it needed coordination on another level. And the CEO was like, this is what we're going to be doing. All of MTN South Africa is focusing on this with all of its might. It's number one priority in the organization. My boss was in charge of project managers, BAs, and testers. So he essentially was the one that was to enforce the operational model of this whole entire thing and appoint a program manager. There would be multiple project managers working on this because it is multiple projects. It's a program that is to last 100 days, the strategy of which is to flip the model of the organization. And this is as a result of a new CEO that's in town. And that was the new CEO's, new CEO's bright ideas. But okay, so the new CEO hired a new marketing executive, and the new marketing executive, this was his bright idea. This 100-day program was his bright idea. He had come from Nigeria, and they had put him in South Africa. Okay, cool. And when you move from Nigeria to South Africa, it's a big promotion because South Africa is the main honcho, remember, it's the head offices. Okay, very well. Cool beans and bananas. So basically, this marketing executive who is running this entire thing, because MTN is a marketing-led organization. So essentially, the marketing executive was the boss of this whole program under his boss, the CEO. And he is working in close connection, in close ties with operations, with finance, with this. He used to be the CEO used to be the CFO. Now he's the CEO, and he has changed character. Something's up, okay? And then there's like this executive that has just recently come in, because I get it, they've been changing them like underwear. He comes up with the strategy, brings on board all the other executives across MTN SA to help along, because this is now a priority one program looked at by the CEO. Their appraisals are going to be based on the prosperity of this program. And then they call my boss in as the leader of the BAs, PMs, and project managers. And then he tells my boss guy of Karabo & Co, you who owns the project managers, give us a program manager, because this needs a really good program manager. We need a program manager. Your responsibility, given that you are servicing marketing, is to find one in all of this company of ours. We don't have time to recruit from outside, so you're going to have to find one just lying around in the organization. I give you permission to even seek one out in the opcos, not in the opcos, sorry, but in MTN, instead of in MTN South Africa. So MTN was made up of MTN Group and MTN South Africa. You can go and find one in MTN Group. You can go and find one in another department. You can do whatever. And they will have to drop what they're doing and come and do this, hand over their project for this coming 3 months and run this program. And my boss, the level of confidence that he had in me, because I had helped him at that stage, it was maybe like a few weeks or maybe 2 months since he was working in this capacity. I had helped him get his feet sturdy in the ground. They were solid. Do you understand? His 2IC in the worst way. I was really very helpful to him, and I made his life smooth. His team was thriving and prospering, doing very well because of the wind beneath his wings that I was. So I was very, very helpful to my boss. Me with this Indian lady, the business analyst girl that was also helping along in this particular regard. We were both like holding down, and our team was doing well. This friend of mine that was very tight with me all of a sudden starts getting all hostile. The Indian girl that I told you I had trained her up. She's a new project manager. She is a baby. Do you understand? So am I, but I'm growing at like electric speed, so I don't count. I am basically a beast. Like, don't compare yourself to me. Plus, even though I might in and of myself be with not too much experience on paper, I have everybody in this environment in concert with each other, that I am essentially a beast in what I do, in a way that you don't have that reputation. Plus, I've been here longer, so relax. She started to compete and pass me shade and give me attitude, and I was like, I don't know what's going on here. We were too busy, guys. I was going through a lot in my own personal life with my mom, issues, and I was living in an apartment, sleeping on the floor on a couch, not a couch, getting a sponge, because of some issues I was going through with my mother. Did not have time to be focusing on petty matters, because I was in transition in my personal life and now also my professional life. So girl, don't give me attitude. Did not think that this woman would ever be the end of my life. But anyway, this is happening. My boss gets told by his marketing boss, the executive of marketing, we need you to gather us a team of project managers, testers, and business analysts to work on this program. We've already assigned a whole bunch of people in marketing, and the resources from your particular team, they need to also source out resources from IT, blah blah, all that jazz. But I also want you to put one program manager above all the project managers. We need a program manager. Do you understand? My boss was like, very well, I'll do that. I have somebody in mind. He then sets up a meeting with me, and I'm sitting there expecting him to be like, so what's up? What's good? Are we going to, what's next? What did the CEO say? Are we going to unravel that particular strategy, etc. Right? I'm expecting him to basically the daily debriefing that we do, because we had a daily meeting where we had to meet. It was so hectic. It was starting to get really hectic, right? We had to hit the ground running, both of us, from the moment he was recruited. He was already just kind of like, all over the show. I'm expecting the good old same thing, but instead he sits me down and he's like, Karabo, you know what? I personally was given an opportunity really fast, even though I was just the other day a senior business analyst. I was given an opportunity as a senior manager because somebody saw something in me and helped me get to where it is that I am at today. When I look at you, I see myself, and I see somebody that I don't believe in people staying in one position or in one job for 5 years and then only getting promoted. If you're good at what you do and you've got all the potential to do it, I feel like you should just be given an opportunity. And right now, I literally do not trust any other project manager in this team. Even some of the other ones that I've met outside of this team that are program managers in their capacity, they're contractors, they work for MTN, we can remove them off their projects. I don't trust them in the way that I trust you. So I want to give you this opportunity. And if at the end of it, we've done well as a team, I will promote you to program manager. So basically, he was promising me program management as a promotion in 3 months if I pull this off. Because this program, the duration of it was 100 days, 3 months, 369, 100 days, and again, just 3 months and then some. That's what's good. I sat there. I was shocked, but pleasantly surprised. And I was like, I won't disappoint you. I'll take it. I'll do it. Again, the same thing that's been happening to me all throughout my career, where it is that I would go somewhere expecting something else, and then I would just suddenly get a promotion. Next thing I get this like bolster in my salary. At the same time, around me, all right, in my private life and professional life, personal life, it's schooling life, I've got all these witches. So here it is that a woman is growing like wildfire. She is small, just like Israel, but powerful. In other words, my CV leaves a lot to be desired. When you look at it on paper, you would not care to even call me for an interview. But when I'm in the room, when I'm working the job, I am slaying people with years of experience. I am slaying people with years of qualifications, with watts upon watts of qualifications under their belt. That's who I was, just like Israel. They rocked up in the land in 1948, or is it 43, or whatever, 48, I think. And in just that short little time, look at how green their land is. They are, I think, the 5th most powerful military in the world. They've got more Nobel Prize Nobel Prize winners in the world than any other country. That small little tiny negligible sliver of a country in the Middle East has done so much in that short space of time, as dry and deserty as it was when they first took it. It is now green. It is agriculturally, it is a powerhouse, like in a short space of time. A tiny little country that is a dynamite in a tiny little package. That was me. My CV would be underestimated by a person looking at it in the world out there. But how I worked, I was like Israel, proper. bringing forth fruit, shooting, and becoming the biggest and baddest force in the Middle East, albeit being the small little thing. I became a very heavy stone for those who were around me. I became a cup of trembling. All who would heave me away would surely be cut into pieces. It beleaguered me, surrounded me just like with Jerusalem, just like with Israel. And they took for granted how tiny I am. All the other nations around me are fighting me. And they decided that they're gonna take me by force. Just as what happened in Israel right now. And I have had to build a case over a decade that frankly was as thick and as strong as it was at the time that this commenced. But nobody is even trying to listen to me. This was the thing that I was arguing about when I first started talking this conversation. That I feel like I am Israel. And I'm worried that this war that is happening in the Middle East right now, that even though it ought be a quick win, come on, it's a fast, it's an in and out. What in the world is going on? I feel like it's going to be dragged, guys, and I feel like it's going to become larger than it is supposed to. Jerusalem has been made a very heavy stone for all the surrounding nations, and all who would heave it away will surely be cut into pieces. Like people who are trying to take away the small little sliver of a country in the Middle East, barely recognizable. If you look at a map, you might not even be able to spot Israel without wearing your glasses or bringing a magnifying glass to find it there, the way that it's so squeezed in between all of those bigger countries in the Middle East. And yet it is indeed a very heavy, never mind rock, but stone, because it's that tiny, just like David dealing with Goliath. I became just like Israel, and so I'm worried about Israel. And around me, friends, family members were making an observation of what ought not have been this level of thriving. So I had cousins. I was in high school when I was like in the beginning of high school when they were matriculating. That when I started working in corporate, I was asking them for tips and hints as how to do things. And I was past them, salary-wise, past them, level, past them. I was flying past everyone to a point where my older sister, who was a Harvard graduate, started to basically, nod when she looked in my direction. She started to respect me. My older sister used to think I was like a little baby. There came a time when she started to talk to me like I was a professional, because she was like, yo, you're starting to do well at work. And that compliment coming from my sister was huge, because my sister was, herself, a little bit of a bamboo shoot. In and of herself, she was like, brr. But it was expected for her to be like, brr. I told you, she was studying overseas from a very early age, but I was the underestimated kid from the get-go. So when my sister started to respect me, that's when I was like, I've arrived. I'm in the big leagues now. I'm in the big leagues. My sister respected me enough to suggest that I should leave MTN and go work for McKinsey, because the MTN doesn't deserve me. I should have listened to her. She wanted me to go and become a consultant. I should have listened to my sister. I should have listened to her. But at the same time, I knew that McKinsey would not want me because I was not, I had yet to get my degree, first of all. And I also was on paper without enough experience. They were not going to take me just from looking at my CV alone. I tried to apply to be a consultant at McKinsey once I lost my job, but all my doors were shut by then. They would not listen. Nobody would talk to me after losing everything. I was blacklisted, essentially, as a person. So, yeah. I should have listened, but I wouldn't have been hired. I was going to take my sister's advice. What do you think? I was first going to get my degree, which I was going to get at the end of that year. I was going to finish my degree that very year. Then only I was going to apply for McKinsey as a consultant and maybe even move. No, I wasn't going to move to another country. I never wanted to move. I told you I wanted to be barefoot and pregnant. So I was going to work in South Africa, but I definitely had intentions to leave South Africa. And if I had gotten promoted, not South Africa, but MTN, if I had gotten the promotion, which I would have, to program manager, after that 3 months, I was unfortunately going to disappoint my boss in that I was going to leave and use my promotion. Now, I wasn't going to leave straight away. I was probably going to work in that position for maybe a year or two and then maybe move to McKinsey. I don't know what would have happened. I became a cup of trembling, if you know what I mean, in that ecosystem. So my cousins made this observation. My family members made this observation. Friends made this observation. Remember, I was the one that had to drop out of university because my mom wasn't paying my fees. And they had started their careers having graduated from university while I was still studying part-time. And yet they were growing like snails and they were struggling to get to where I was getting. And they were like, I'm sorry, no. This is a competition. So I got afflicted, witchcraft, by friends as well, to slow down. Colleagues. One senior manager that was the project sponsor. Was he a project owner? No, owner. One senior manager that was a project owner of one of my projects. I picked that project up when it was dottering about like a geriatric. I told you, Project Sako MTN, whenever you would adopt them as a PM, there was nothing going on there. No proper handover. You don't know what's going on. You start everything from scratch. The team was disintegrated like, like sheep that have been scattered because they have no shepherd. I came on board, and within 3 to 4 months, there were weekly project meetings. There was a proper scope document. the business analyst was doing what she was supposed to do. The one really gifted guy from finance that was in and of himself a little bit of a beast that would ultimately get suddenly promoted to senior manager, and I respected that promotion because he deserved it. He was a genius. He reminded me of Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. When he first met me, when I first met him, looked at me on some, and then you're talking, what do you want? I remember when I got to him at his desk, he was chatting with some other professional next to him, and I tried to talk to him about this particular project, and he was talking to me like, well, relax, like, this is what I'm doing, I got this, I've been running this on my own, I don't need you. I like literally ripped him out of that meeting, and I started to tell him where to get off, and he was like, okay, we'll have a meeting next Wednesday. My goodness, by the time that 4 months had progressed, he was weekly attending my meetings. He was weekly always at my desk, giving status, getting status from me. We basically became like partners in crime in this particular program where he initially disrespected the living daylights out of me. And by the time that I had raised this project up from the ground, he felt relieved by my presence, and he actually really liked me a lot. I essentially gained his respect. That's how I used to be. So the senior manager, the project owner of that particular project, right, made these observations and my influence with people, and my boss even said that you basically defibrillated and raised this project off the ground, and we went to market with it. I was so proud. It was one of my most proudest moments. Like, yeah, we went to market, a project that was being dragged through the mud for something like 3 years, going nowhere, nobody aware as to what's going on. Finally went to market, and when it went to market in its first week, it made so much money that it got noticed by the the executive of it. It wasn't operations, but it was a, what do you call this? It was a roaming project. So it was the executive of, like, not international affairs, but international, like, communications, like, yeah, because it was for roaming. It was a project that was to enable data roaming out there outside of South African borders, and it made so much money that I got given recognition by the dude in charge of those particular international relations, and I was like, hello, hi, my name is Caravo, if you want to give it a twang, it's okay. Like, that guy saw me, he used to walk right past me, now he greets. I'm mad. These people messed me up at a time when I was doing so. Alrighty, so after that project was launched from my area, it then got taken over to MTN Group, and it was about to be launched now, and so therefore have project teams working on it individually in the opcos in other countries across Africa, because I had succeeded to bring that project to market. I gave my boss lady fame by delivering that project to market. And because of that, the senior manager, the owner, made a decision to bewitch the living daylights out of my career. He was one of the people that came at my career. He was jealous. He was scared that I would take him over. And he was one of those people that had been around from the very beginning. He was legacy. He was a legacy employee. And he saw a young woman with barely any experience under her belt basically do the impossible. Defibrillate a beast, a monster from the ground, take it to market, be recognized by the international guy dealing with these projects, and then launch it, essentially hand it over to OPCO, to the OPCOs, to Group. Hand it over to MTN Group. That's what I did. So that whole thing cost me, around me, essentially, I started then to get lambasted by people. All right, you guys, if you understand what I'm saying right now, by everybody around my life, my colleagues started to slap me with witchcraft when they made these observations, my friends, my family, all at the same time. And then this girl that I was working with, this colleague that I was working with, that was my friend that I told you guys about, also she started to pass me shade, give me attitude, but I was too busy to concentrate on what she was doing. Little did I know that she would be the end of my career. Imagine that, guys. South Africa's complaining about a skills exodus, crying about the diaspora. They lost one of their best employees, and they made sure she can never get another job anywhere else again. That's what they did. Anywho, whatever. My boss gives me the program, right, to run. At the same time all this is happening, my boss, who now trusts me like no man's business, is like, I want you, no one else. Hallelujah, God is working. I'm like, sure, I'll take it. I'm about to get promoted to program manager. After, when I was new as a PM, one of my former friends, like, she wanted to be a friend, but she passed me shade. She was like, I'm gonna miss being a coordinator. I was like, Wandela. People saw me as this little baby. Now I was going to be this little baby that was senior in comparison to all of them. So I would have been a program coordinator, promoted to project manager, And overnight, I would have become a program manager, where they were all still project managers without even doing my PMP. I wasn't even interested in being a project manager for the rest of my life. I was bored with the job. So when my boss suggested that I go and do my PMP, I told him maybe after a year. Right now, I want to finish my degree. I've got too much on my plate already. That's what's good. So I was delaying not the inevitable. I didn't want to do my PMP because I was not trying to go on a professional track for project management. I wanted to change over to management consulting. That's what I wanted. Yeah. The stuff that the ladies from, Deloitte, the consulting agencies, and McKinsey, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to move to management consulting. That was my dream job, all right? And I knew that I could get there from project management. It was a good track. So if I had gotten to program manager, it would have been a nice little easy, like, jump, hop, move over. So yeah, I actually, one of the companies, by the way, that interviewed me and then it basically promised me the job and then turned its back on me because some creepy weird stuff is happening in the not Cosmos only, but I believe calls were made and I've been blacklisted somehow in the country, was IQ Business. And I got this interview when I was already in sorrow, struggling, suffering. IQ Business, there I was going to be a management consultant. I was basically, I got a job interview in suffering about 6 or 7 months after losing my job at MTN. I got an interview with IQ Business and I was interviewing for a management consultant job. And they were going to hire me on the premise of, what is this? The experience I had, all the stories that I told, and basically explaining what happened at MTN. That woman was prepared to ignore everything. But then all of a sudden, Guatula. And when I called, they wouldn't even wouldn't take my calls, but they kept on being like, no, she'll call you back, wouldn't. Sent emails, ignored me. All that jazz. Guys, Yazzie, the things that have happened to me, door slam. Like, this woman loved me in the interview to a point of, like, we were basically talking salary. What are you prepared to take? When can you start? That's what we were talking about. Dead quiet. And from IQ Business, it would have been so easy to move to McKinsey. So easy. Because I would already been within a consulting role. God have mercy on my soul. My heart is so broken. With what happened. Anyway, whatever. I start working the program. Guys, God was with me. He went before. Like, launching projects on time is literally near on an impossibility in any ecosystem because of issues that tend to come up no matter how much you might scope, blah, blah, pre-warn, pre-plan. Every single project in that program in the first month of its operation by the project managers in the program was launched on time. Guys, it was a miracle. Remember, my former boss has been demoted, so she's a project manager. So I'm boss over her now. The one that used to give me bad appraisal scores. Yeah. And my boss in the beginning is happy with me. We are working so well together to a point where when I bump into him in the hallways, gives me a high five. Literally boss from heaven. Because I'd always struggled with bosses all throughout my career. Up until that point, that was like a boss out of heaven. I got along with for the first time in my life, I had a bosom buddy for a boss where we were slapping each other with high fives in the corridor because of the prosperity we were facing. The discord, the dissension, how crazy he went. I can account for all that insanity with all the witchcraft that was operating around because that man became a fool after being very wise for a season. He was manipulated, and I believe he was turned also because of the favor that I was gaining. So here it is that I'm killing it, I'm kicking it, guys. And this new marketing executive who launched this big program, and I'm the program manager of it, he knows me now. Everybody knows me, right? Of projects that we are launching. It was little micro projects that we had to launch one after the other over like 100 days, right? They were successfully launched and the reception in the market was very positive. In the first week, the stats were being released by marketing after like everybody was working like a well-oiled machine daily at around like maybe 8 in the morning, 8:30. There was this massive meeting in this one, we used to call it a boardroom that was for this particular project, and there were not enough chairs. Some people were standing in it, and I was chairing this whole thing. And some of the people that were there, guys, were like SMs, GMs, like general managers, like people that I would invite to my meetings in the past because they were owners or sponsors of my project, but they wouldn't come because I'm not important enough. So I would just send them minutes of the meeting, and I would every so often run to their desks with a whole bunch of notes and falling apart all over the show with me tripping over there. And when I get to their desk and I'm like, can I please have 5 minutes of your time? Like people that I used to kiss the behinds off, and sometimes even when I spoke to them, they would not look at me. They'd be twirling in their chairs and eating their pens as I spoke. Were now like in my meeting and they were listening to me speaking and they were taking me seriously. They were raising points. It was just, I was tired. I was exhausted, but it was such a thrill. I was having such a good time. My boss was so good at what he was doing, and that he was such a good, he was so enabling and protective, in that whenever people would pull stunts and give rubbish, he would be the voice of, Bohash. I'm not aggressive. I can't be like, why haven't you done that? He was the one to yell at people on my behalf whenever stuff would like fall apart. We worked so well together, like a well-oiled machine. I was so happy, even though I was exhausted because I barely slept. I would still be working at home, sleeping at like 1, 2 a.m. in the morning, waking up early, go to work, meet with my boss. After that, meet in this big meeting, running this entire program. I also gained respect from project managers that were they were my seniors. Back when I was a program coordinator, I was servicing their projects, their teams. And I thought that they would give me attitude, but they all were working so well with me. They didn't give me attitude except for the one that was my friend. So I was doing really well. And I was doing reports daily. I was running a whole big chunky machine. With my boss, the two of and the BA lady was my business analyst 2IC as well, right? The two of us worked really well together. Loved her like no man's business, right? She was really truly helpful. My team came on board. I was doing well. But with that level of success of this little child, where did she come from? All over, out of the blue, all of a sudden. I got slapped with more sorcery from colleagues, but not only that, there was a whole bunch of animosity that brewed from the ground, from senior people. Senior people. So no longer, so in my initial attacks were from like meager me's, the rest of me's, these middle management randos and downwards. That's where I was getting attitude and being passed shade. Corporate politics. Now I was being looked at negatively by AMA exec, by SMs, senior managers. Yo, guys, next part.